the US president's long considered himself a skillful negotiator and deal maker. His self-proclaimed talents, one could argue, seem to have paid off this week after visiting influential Arab states and securing multi-billion-dollar investments for the US and potentially his own family business.
Now, the three-day trip to Saudi Arabia, Qatar and the United Arab Emirates is his first major overseas trip, and that in itself is significant. And it also has wider political implications right across the region and beyond. So let's explore this further with Policy Director at Defence Priorities, Ben Friedman. Thank you so much, Ben, for taking the time to speak with us this morning.
Thanks for having me on.
I thought it was quite an extraordinary speech for when Donald Trump addressed the delegates in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. I mean, the speech went on for about 40 minutes, but the gist of it, I thought, was quite extraordinary. And I want to read to you some of the things that he said here. And I'm going to quote him denouncing previous American interventionist policies in the region. And he said, far too many American presidents have been afflicted with the notion that it is our job to look into the souls of foreign leaders and use U.S. policy to dispense justice for their sins. Obviously here, he's just discrediting all the other American leaders that have come to the Saudi Arabia and the Gulf region as well, and basically criticize their policies. Is this a more emphatic approach to the region, and is it more effective?
Well, the speech really was denouncing efforts at nation building and these dreams of transforming countries in the name of democracy or American values. And so I think that is long overdue. It's good rhetoric. I think it's important to point out that the sort of history of the United States in that region in particular, the last few decades, has been a bloody failure. So I give the president credit for that rhetoric, though it's not clear that he's actually making a sharp break from those past policies in a broader sense. So, you know, the president's trying to negotiate a peace deal with Iran, but at the same time, he's very eagerly threatening to work with Israel to bomb them if they don't sign a deal. So to me, that's a little too similar to the past. You know, it's not a full-scale nation-building threat, but it is sort of an attempt potentially at regime change in Iran or a threat of something like that if they don't sign a deal. So I think that's a mistake. His closeness to Saudi Arabia, even though he has stopped talking lately, at least about giving them security guarantees, is also a kind of mistake. I think generally what we need, and I hope this administration will do this, is just have a more distant and business-like relationship with all the countries in that region and not try to manage its politics.
I want to move on. There's so much to talk about, particularly about the lifting of sanctions in Syria now. I'm just running out of time here, though, Ben. And I want to move on to talk about his envoy, Steve Witkoff here. He's a close friend and some say the real Secretary of State, and he's involved in negotiating the ceasefire with Ukraine and the Gaza conflicts as well. He's also involved in these talks with Iran over the denuclearization of that state. How does that all play into the Trump administration's America First policy?
Well, I think the president really wants a deal. You know, people always call him a transactionalist. I like to say he's a spotlight transactionalist, and that he doesn't care that much about the details. So I think he really just wants the press conference and the accolades for doing a deal and increasing the odds of peace. And that's okay, but it's not clear that his whole administration is with him. And we have the whole Republican Congress kind of objecting to the idea that he would give Iran too good a deal. So, I think America First is not that deeply attached to the deal making. It's because the deal making is this sort of surface level element to it, that it doesn't really transform policies fundamentally.
Right. So he wants the deal, as you say. Congress isn't really behind these deals. Will these deals hold?
Well, it depends what we're talking about. So, what he announced with the Saudis is really not much. It's sort of a piffle. They said they're going to invest a bunch of money. They already invest a bunch of money. It's not really clear to me that there's any new investment coming out of this. Maybe there's a little bit of cooperation for American companies. So I think we don't really need to talk about that. It's not that serious. But the deal with Iran would be a very major thing if he could get that pulled off. And I think he could easily overcome congressional opposition, in part because they probably won't get the vote on it. It won't be a treaty. So I think that would stick if he could pull it off. And if he had, he has some other ambitions for like a Saudi deal with the Israelis, normalization. That seems unlikely to happen now, but right. I think those types of deals could also be important.
Trump continues to revel in the art of the deal, shall we say, and he loves to continually talk about himself as a negotiator. But I wonder if his campaign for capitalism will actually overcome deep-seated national and sovereign conflicts in many parts of the world.
Well, it's not gonna. I mean, he's doing this sort of helping American business type deals with Saudi Arabia, if you can even call them deals, promoting American companies. And I think that's okay, but it's not, it doesn't really matter to the American interest in a deep way. And, it's not going to solve the Middle East problems. And similarly, I think he has this idea in Israel, which is going nowhere, that you can sort of do, opening up to Saudi Arabian business will get the Israelis to agree to give Palestinian statehood, and that, you can do something in Gaza involving development and the sort of fanciful ideas that he put out a couple months ago that will transform the lives of Palestinians. And I think that's all completely made up, or at least a kind of like a dream state that has very little to do with the politics on the ground.
Ben Friedman, Policy Director at Defense Priorities. It's great getting your insights today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks.